All right, good people, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Planning Podcast. I am here with greatness. As soon as I walked in the room, I felt my net worth increase. I am here at my alma mater, Samford University, with the 19th president, Dr. Beck Taylor.
Isaac, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome home.
Absolutely.
Always good to have you on campus. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And so we are honored to share space with you, also learn from you. There's so much innovation, so much courage in the leadership that you've been able to exemplify. But we want to start at the beginning. So before it was Dr. Taylor.
Yeah.
Who was young Beck? Where did you grow up? Tell us more about we'll just say the different experiences and the exposure that you had at a young age.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. Isaac, I'm a huge fan of yours, as you know, and so I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Absolutely. When people ask me where I'm from, that feels like a trick question, in part because I've had a lot of homes. Yeah. I was born in Arkansas, lived there for a very brief amount of time, moved to Louisville, Kentucky, Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, Naples, Florida. This is all before going to college.
Wow.
And so those early growing up experiences taught me how to be flexible and nimble.
Right.
They taught me how to make friends quickly and easily. Probably taught me how to appreciate places for their value and worth and to see the best parts of places.
Right.
And then, through higher education and professional life, it's been more moving around. And so I think my early childhood really prepared me well for a life in higher education, a life that really has moved me around the U.S. quite a bit. I like to say that my earliest childhood was probably well scripted for my future as a Samford University president. I was the child of a Baptist preacher and a beauty queen. And Isaac, I've often said that is the perfect genetic combination to create a Samford president. Right?
That's right.
But in all honesty, sadly, my parents were divorced early. That thrust my mom and me into transient poverty and some homelessness. And so my first 10 years of life were actually pretty difficult. And that had a lot of broad implications and impacts on my own life. Perhaps not every young boy needs a dad. I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Right.
And so I had behavioral issues. I had academic challenges. And really got off to a pretty rough start. And so whereas my kind of origin story, you might say, oh, that guy could be a future president of Samford. If you had known me when I was in first and second grade, you would have thought this kid's headed for trouble. Yeah. And the intervention in my life, the redemptive story, if you will, of my life, was my stepfather, who came into my life when I was 9 years old, adopted me. And from then on, the trajectory of my life changed dramatically. Right. And so I think that story is important. I often share that story with Samford students because, at Samford, we have students from across, the array of experiences. We have students who have grown up in stable homes, come from economically secure environments. We also have students who come out of very difficult circumstances. Right. And I want our students to know that regardless of your story, you can be successful here. Yeah. And so I like to tell that part of my story. It's also shaped the way I view life. It even shaped what I was interested in as an economist. We may talk about that later around, how do we direct public policy to help pull kids, particularly kids who are in struggling situations, living in poverty, living in homelessness. How do we pull them, into better circumstances to allow them to flourish? All of that interest was shaped by those early stories as a young boy.
Wow. Yeah. I've heard someone say it's hard to tell a child to dream if they don't have a bed to sleep in. And there are different interactions that we have with people. I know for myself, I call them substitute dads, if it was either a coach or if it was either someone that was in your community. As you were starting to become and evolve, who were some of those pictures that you saw that said, I want to do that, I want to be that? And I know your stepfather played an incredible role, being proximate, showing love, being there. Are there any other examples that you can speak to that help form some of what you are today?
No doubt. Even before my stepfather came into my life, certainly coaches. I grew up on athletic fields like you did.
Yeah.
And so even in those very difficult years, there were people who loved me, who attended to me, pastors, people who saw that my mom and me were in a difficult situation and tried to surround us with some stability and love, no doubt. But my third grade teacher in Dallas, Texas, Mrs. Smith, was probably as formative a person in my life as anybody.
Wow.
My parents had just gotten, my mom had just gotten remarried. We had moved from Louisville, Kentucky to Dallas, Texas. Isaac, I had just failed the third grade. And I was being held over to do the third grade again. So I find myself in third grade, Mrs. Smith's classroom, and I've got a new identity. I'm living in a new place. I've got a new family. In so many ways, my life had radically changed. And here was this woman who knew of my difficult upbringing, who knew that just 2 years earlier, my seat in class was in a coat closet in my classroom because I was such a behavioral challenge for that teacher. And she took me under her arms and loved me and nurtured me and showed me that I was a child of promise.
Right.
And that I was somebody who was bright and intelligent and had all of the capabilities in me to be successful. And she was able to nurture that and to bring that out of me. And so I look back at that season of life, that transition when my mother was remarried, we moved, Mrs. Smith, others that began to form and develop and shape me, pastors, youth leaders, coaches. And those were all incredibly formative and impactful people in my life.
Right. Got to shout out Mrs. Smith. I love hearing that story. So sports, you mentioned sports, you mentioned coaches. What sports did you play?
Yeah.
And in what position did you play?
So when I was growing up, it was the case that kids played all the sports.
That's exactly right.
Today, I think it's unfortunate that kids sometimes are kind of being pressured and forced to specialize and specialize pretty early.
Yep.
But if there was a ball involved, I was playing it, whether that was soccer or baseball or football, tennis. I mean, I played all of the sports. When I got to high school, I became a football player.
Okay.
Never played football before my freshman year of high school, but fell in love with football. I love basketball. Basketball is probably my favorite sport to watch as a spectator.
Right.
But I was never great at basketball. But I found my home in football.
Right.
And played quarterback for my high school team. And of course, like you, learned so much about life.
Yes.
Playing on a team. Suffering the indignities of defeat, relishing the joys of success, learning how to be a part of a team, learning how to put others in front of my own needs. Sports is such a metaphor for life, and it's such an incubator for character and virtue. Right. And that was certainly the case for me. And of course, as you know, I continue to be a big sports fan.
Absolutely.
As a college leader, I love promoting the Bulldogs. I love thinking about how athletics is an important front door to the university here. And, in just a few minutes, I'm going to head to a basketball game. And there's nothing more enjoyable for me than seeing young people being shaped the way I was, through athletics.
Right. So now we are finishing up high school. When did college come on the radar? Because typically those that may come from a low-income household or they're within a community that may not have resources to even think if that is an opportunity, or have examples that may come from the community that's been able to realize that opportunity. What interested you about, continuing your education, and then where did you go post high school?
So college was actually really always on the radar for me. My mother was college educated and getting a master's degree. My father, very well educated. My stepfather, very well educated. And then of course, in my latter years of childhood, I was in a very different socioeconomic group than I was in my early childhood. And so college was always kind of where I was heading. And not unlike a lot of young boys in high school, I saw myself as an athlete and wanting to continue my college career. And so as a junior and senior, I was being recruited by some football programs, and that kept college on the front burner for me.
Right.
Probably not as interested or eager to go to college around academic pursuits. That did change eventually. So I was recruited to play football at West Point, the military academy. And they ran the wishbone veer offense, which was my offense in high school. And so I was excited to go play, and I had had some military people in my family, and so the idea of going to West Point, the idea of service to my country, the idea of being in a regimented environment, that all appealed to me.
Right.
There was one big thing standing in the way of me and going to West Point. That is, I'm blind as a bat, Isaac, and I always have been. And so I failed my physical exam.
Wow.
And so they want Army officers not to be blind, apparently. And maybe even quarterbacks not to be blind, too. So I had to change my plans fairly quickly. And I had grown up some in Texas. I had grown up some going to camps, athletic camps and other things on the campus of Baylor University. And so when I had to change my plans, Baylor was kind of at the top of my list. And so ended up going to Baylor and in Waco, Texas. Loved my experience at Baylor. Really found my passion for academics at Baylor. I was always a decent student in high school. I didn't have to work very hard, and so I didn't. And so I was I was a decent but average student in high school.
Right.
For some reason, that something clicked my freshman year, and I realized that I needed to get serious about academics. That this was a great opportunity for me. I wasn't there to play football.
Right.
I was there to get an education, and so loved my 4 years at Baylor. The best thing that happened to me at Baylor is I met Julie Deering, who became Julie Taylor. We met the very first day of our freshman year in Calculus 1 class.
Hold on.
Yeah.
The very first day.
First day. Yeah.
Very first.
Yep.
Who approached who?
Yeah.
And then at what point? Now I got a few questions now. Who approached who? At what point did you say, I enjoyed talking to this young lady, and of course it had to be mutual. But who approached who?
Well, maybe it was the future college president in me, but I was the first one in class. It was an 8 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, Friday Calculus 1 class. And I was there 10, 15 minutes early. And the second person in the classroom was Julie. And Isaac, this was before the days of cell phones.
Yeah, that's right.
So when she came in and sat down, maybe today we would have been scrolling and, maybe not paying attention to each other. We didn't have anything to do but talk to each other for about 10 minutes.
That's right.
And she was delightful. What I found out later was she was wicked smart. And so as we were going through Calculus 1 together, I needed to draft on somebody, and I drafted on Julie. And we began a romantic interest in one another later that semester. Ended up dating all 4 years of college. We were engaged after our junior year. And so Julie's an incredible person. We'll talk about this later, perhaps. She's a partner in every sense of the word, both as my wife and mother to my children, but also here at Samford plays an instrumental role. But we met each other. I certainly probably had bigger visions of our relationship before she did, which is appropriate. But in all honesty, walking that 4-year journey with Julie, growing up together. I mean, she was 17, I was 18 years old when we met. Growing up together in many ways. What a wonderful way to kind of start our life together.
Absolutely. First day, freshman year. And you know what's unique? I know for me and my household, my wife, one of the things that, not necessarily seeing an example at home, it took a little bit more work to recognize the value that she was bringing, but also being able to speak to other mentors and see their relationship and say, you know what, this marriage thing may be something I want to pursue. What were the examples for you to be able to know which characteristics to recognize, not only in yourself, to be able to approach her that way, but also in Julie? Yeah,
that's a great question. When I was in junior high school, I became a Christian. And from that point on, the Lord pursued me in ways that are inexplicable and wonderful, but certainly impressed upon me, even at an early age, that a partner in life, a wife, needed to be somebody who also loved the Lord.
Right.
And one of the first really attractive things about Julie for me was that she loved Jesus.
Right.
And that faith was serious for her. And I think that might have been the first hook, other than she was a really beautiful young woman.
That's right.
And so I think my mom and my stepfather exhibited characteristics that were admirable and certainly kind of set the foundation for my expectations for what a healthy relationship looked like. After I met Julie, I fell as much in love with her family as I was with her.
Wow.
And so her parents very quickly became a godly example for us in terms of just, how to be partners, how to be friends, how to put the Lord first in a marriage. And then, we've just been surrounded by incredible couples our entire lives, both older contemporaries that have constantly kind of pointed us to what a healthy relationship looks like. Julie and I have been married 33 years, and we work as hard on our marriage today as we did our first year.
That's right.
And I think that's been a part of our success, honestly, is that we've said that this is important. Relationships aren't easy. And that we need to always be thinking about, praying about, and working hard on our relationship. And Julie's a very patient woman. But we love each other for who each other is.
Right.
And our relationship's important to us, and we work on it.
Yeah. So engaged your junior year. Now we're approaching graduation. There's a focus around finance and economics. And I'm pretty sure some of the curiosity is, all right, I got to start making some money. There's two of us now. You know, there's another heartbeat that I'm responsible for. Where did you start? I believe you got into the private sector first.
I did,
around some consulting. Can you share with us a little bit more of what that
So about
entails?
my sophomore, junior year, I was in the business school. I was taking courses in finance and economics, and I had this situation where I would get back exams and I was making, 95s on exams, and I'd look around and my buddies were making 75s. And I thought, okay, well, this is maybe, the Lord's way of saying, this is something you should pursue. So much like, I hope your experience at Samford, so many students' experiences at Samford, I was surrounded by mentors at Baylor, faculty members who cared for me, mentored me. I was in their office all the time. We were talking about opportunities, life after graduation, those kinds of things. And it was during that time where I really began to feel the nudge and the call toward higher education. My junior, senior year, if you had asked me, what do you think you're going to be doing long term? I would have said, I think I'm going to be a college professor.
Wow.
But as you said, there were some immediate needs. And one of those was, Julie and I were getting married right after graduation, and we needed to have some financial stability at least. And also part of the advice I got was graduate school is a big commitment, especially if you're going for the PhD, which is a multi-year commitment. So maybe go work for a while and see if that nudge continues, right? And, let's test that a little bit. And so after graduation, I landed a job with Arthur Andersen Consulting. Arthur Andersen at the time was a big accounting firm, and their consulting side was looking for young economics graduates to work in the area of finance and banking. They were doing a lot of consulting in that area. So the first year after my undergraduate studies, I was in Houston, Texas, working in the banking industry with Andersen Consulting, and specifically with the Resolution Trust Corporation was my client. And those of your viewers who are old enough will remember that the RTC was an interesting organization in as much as it collected and housed all of the assets from failed thrift banks. The United States has had several banking crises. And in the early 90s, we were in the community banking, thrift banking crisis. Lots of community banks, thrift banks were going out of business at the time. they had a lot of real estate on their balance sheets. And so I ended up writing software that helped value those thrift assets so that they could be auctioned off. And so I was able to use my degree, my economics degree, pretty quickly out of the gate. But in all honesty, I always kind of had my eye toward graduate school.
Right.
And so while I've had a lot of connections with the private industry my entire career, even as an academic economist, I only really worked 1 year for Anderson, and then immediately after that we headed to graduate school. So, so I've only really had a real job 1 year of my life. That's what I like to say. But I will say that was a formative experience for me, and really helped shape some of my interests academically, and really prepared me well for graduate school.
Are there any best practices that you can extract that you've been able to implement from that early experience, getting into the private sector, assessing businesses, deals, establishing a software to be able to confirm valuation, working with different individuals? Like, what are some of the best practices that you were able to really extract from that experience?
Yeah, certainly, the idea of working in a team environment, recognizing the skills and gifts of others relative to your own skills and gifts, figuring out pretty early in my career that I didn't have to be the smartest person in the room. I just needed to add value to whatever team I was on. These are lessons that have really stuck with me for sure. In terms of just business knowledge and understanding, really gained a great appreciation for strategic thinking and strategic planning. And in fact, later in my career, built my own consulting practice, around helping organizations write and execute strategic planning. That's obviously been a really important function as a university president, helping organizations like Samford think strategically about the future. So those are all transferable skills and experiences. But I think the people skills are probably the most important ones, right? The technical skills are important. They come, they're useful. But as you know, the hardest problems in business are usually ones that aren't associated with dollar signs.
That's exactly right.
They're usually associated with how to work and play well with others. Or to help teams succeed. And I find myself now, I've been a university president for 16 years. I find myself more interested today in how teams work together, cultivating teams, learning the players, and learning how to put those players together in ways that create value and success. I find myself thinking about those topics at least as much as I think about other more technical issues of business, as important as they are. Because at the end of the day, it's a people business. At the end of the day, organizations, a constraint for organizations is how well people are working together. And that's certainly true at Samford, and it was certainly true in the many organizations that I worked in before coming here.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the balance between art and science. There's a scientific approach that may be quantitatively driven, but there's this artistic, we'll just say, acknowledgement that needs to be seen, It's the colors in between the black and white that sometimes isn't seen as a priority because, as you mentioned, it's not necessarily tangible immediately. So your journey getting back into academia. So you say, you know what, this 401k is great. I would love to have equity at some point, but there is this passion to ensure that the way I'm able to cultivate minds is able to be displayed. So when did you get back into academia? Where and then what were you able to?
So about a year after I graduated with my undergraduate degree, Julie and I moved from Waco to West Lafayette, Indiana, home of the Purdue Boilermakers. And we spent 4 years in West Lafayette. I should have mentioned that Julie is an educator herself. And so all during this time, as we've graduated from college, we're newly married. I'm now in graduate school. Julie's teaching. She's a high school biology teacher. And so our family's always been educators at heart. So we go to Purdue. I spent 4 years working on a master's and PhD in economics. and with every intent to go into the academy, with every intent to be a college professor.
Yeah.
And after I was done with my PhD studies, I had the great privilege and really the peculiar and unique experience of going back to alma mater.
Yeah.
My first academic appointment was back at Baylor.
Wow.
And within 5 years of graduating with my undergraduate degree, I found myself linking arms with, side by side, in the same department with some of my own mentors.
Wow.
The people who instilled in me a love for learning, instilled in me a love for economics, the people that I was in their offices wondering, what does the future look like?
Right.
Here I am now, I'm side by side. I'm a professional counterpart
Right.
with these same people. And so loved my time in the classroom. I was good at it, to be frank. I loved teaching. I loved helping students find their passion,
Right.
think themselves about what God was calling them to. I did a lot of economic research as well. Faculty members, as you know, are required and expected to be thinkers in the field and do research and scholarship and publish, and I was doing all of that as well. And so I felt like I had hit the grand slam.
Yeah.
Being back at Baylor, and ended up about 8 years into my stint at Baylor, ended up being invited to go to Harvard University to be a visiting professor at Harvard. Wow. Had some connections there. I was doing some research with some people that were at Harvard. And so for a year, Julie and I picked up, we had 2 children at the time, moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it's been a year working at the prestigious, one of the oldest and perhaps most prestigious universities in the world.
Right.
And it was a transformative experience in this sense. Not only was it professionally enlightening and professionally encouraging, but it taught us that there was life outside of Waco, Texas. Now, I know that that's hard to believe. I know the idea that there's life outside of Waco, Texas. But it really opened up our eyes to this idea that the Lord might actually be calling us to something more.
Right.
Not, I think very coincidentally, very providentially, at Baylor, I was being tapped to participate in some leadership development programs. Somebody at Baylor said, Beck Taylor might be somebody we want to cultivate in terms of leadership.
Right.
Long story short, as my time at Baylor, I didn't know this at the time, as my time at Baylor was coming to conclusion, I was tapped by the university president at Baylor to shadow him for a year.
Wow.
And as part of a larger leadership development program. But Isaac, that began to instill in me some idea that maybe the Lord was beginning to shape me as a leader. Now, I had always been a leader. We talked about sports. I was always the catcher on the baseball team. Yep. I was the point guard on the basketball team.
Yep. I
was the quarterback on the football team.
Right.
I was the goalkeeper on the soccer team.
Decision maker.
I was always the person who held a lot of responsibility and a lot of accountability.
Right.
And I gravitated toward those roles. And so not surprisingly, somebody said, he's got some leadership, capability.
Right.
And so not long after that experience, I was tapped to be the associate dean of the business school at Baylor. And so that got me into formal administration work. And then a year after that, I get a call from this school in Homewood, Alabama called Samford University. And that started a really fun and unique chapter in my life.
That's excellent. Can you reference some of the research and the publications, even the one that may have linked you with the colleague at Harvard, and if some of your background help yield the focus on the research and the publications that you...
Sure. Yeah, so one of the wonderful things about economic science is that it can inform and shape thinking on a whole host of topics.
Right.
Many people call economics the imperial science, and as much as it can inform and shape conversations in a lot of different areas. Early in my career, I was doing what you might consider to be pretty traditional economic research. I was interested in how firms competed. I was interested in how products were differentiated to gain market share. I was interested in strategic behavior. So one of my areas and fields was game theory, which at the time was a relatively new economic paradigm. So I was doing what you would expect economists to do, especially microeconomists. I was thinking hard about how firms succeed, in relatively competitive environments. And I was also interested in what economists call human capital development. And this gets back to my origin story. I was interested in how human beings collect experiences that help form and shape who they become. Economists call this human capital development. We know that as human beings, throughout childhood, early adolescence, teenage years, that we human beings collect experiences. We collect educational experiences, we collect social emotional experiences, we collect experiences in our families of origin, other things. All of those things combine to create, in some ways, to create the people we become. And that has a dramatic impact on education outcomes, labor market outcomes, health outcomes, really the full life cycle, of human development. And so I began asking questions about how do children who grow up in conditions like those that I grew up in early in my childhood, how do they escape those circumstances to become the children promised they are? My brother-in-law, so Julie's brother, is a child developmental psychologist.
Look at this.
And so, quite literally, over some Thanksgiving Day turkey.
You gotta love it.
Eric is his name. Eric and I began talking about how economists think about these issues, particularly poverty, how economists think about poverty, and how developmental psychologists think about poverty. And what we started sharing papers back and forth, and what we realized was that developmental psychologists and economists, while interested in very much the same kinds of questions, were really talking past one another. And that there could be some bridges built between economic science and child developmental psychology. And so we set out to write some large grants to help truly bridge those two disciplines so that we could put the full firepower of both of those disciplines together to help solve some pretty pesky problems. And that's what got us to Harvard together. So we ended up spending about a decade writing papers and doing research that truly tried to connect economic science and how economists were thinking about this with how developmental psychologists were thinking about this. We wrote some pretty important papers that helped to shape some policy. So some of the papers that we wrote ended up being included in testimony in various state legislatures across the country, were cited in congressional records and other kinds of things. And so it's a great story of how the Lord has used my life and my story to help shape some of my professional interests that I hope made a difference in how policymakers thought about issues of homelessness, transiency, education, programs like Head Start, ways in which we can wrap our collective arms around children who are growing up in disadvantaged circumstances, children who are otherwise bright and capable and have a lot of promise, but need interventions, to allow them to fully succeed. And that became a real passion of mine. It continues to be a passion of mine. And so that was a lot of what I did as an economist.
That's incredible work. It is, I know it has made an impact and will continue to make an impact. That is a huge gap that we see. We've been able to work with the city of Birmingham. As we all know, the city of Birmingham has some unique demographics when it pertains to the poverty rate. And as we've been able to work with different partners and really establish what a true public-private partnership can look like, the economy has been the common denominator of our conversation. How can we ensure that more dollars flow into what it takes to be able to run this ecosystem? If folks are going to a Chris Brown concert, if they're going to the gas station, if they're going to a restaurant, but we also have to acknowledge the mindset that cultivated their actions, and to ensure that if there's any collective experiences that we can at least acknowledge along the way the sustainable solution, or the solution is more sustainable long term because it factors in both parties, right? It's the numerical value, right? But also seeing them as a whole human, right? And so that's incredible work. So we are back in Homewood, so we're going to stay with our journey here. At Samford University. I would be shocked if you were not in the business school, so the Broad School of Business.
Yes, so I ended up landing a job here as dean of at that time, the Samford University School of Business. It was not the Broad School of Business at that time. Yeah. That happened while I was here, and that's a fun story we might talk about. But look, Samford University took a big bet on me. I was 35 years old at the time. I was the youngest dean of an accredited business school in the United States at 35.
Did you know that at the time?
I had a good sense about it. Yeah, I went to these dean conferences, and I got a pretty quick read of the room. And but you know, I didn't think anything would ever pull us away from Baylor. But as I said, that experience at Harvard really taught me that the Lord was maybe expanding our boundaries a little bit. And it was just at that time when Dr. Tom Quartz called and said, you know, would you be interested in coming and leading our business school? And after a period of prayer and discernment, Julie and I jumped at the opportunity. We thought, what an amazing opportunity to move to a school that we knew something about. Right. Baylor and Samford ran in the same circles, historically Baptist institutions. A lot of people shared Baylor-Samford connections. And so it was not an unfamiliar place. The opportunity to come and work for somebody like Tom Quartz, who was a legend in Christian higher education, Baptist higher education, was an opportunity that I could not pass up. Now, interestingly, 3 months after I arrived, he announced his retirement, which I think we call bait and switch in the business.
That's right. Had him.
Yeah, but Tom was just an incredible mentor of mine. Following Tom's leadership at Samford, Dr. Andy Westmoreland came. I got to spend 4 years with Andy. But the opportunity to come and begin to flex some newly formed leadership muscles in higher education in a place that had so much upward trajectory and opportunity was a chance of a lifetime. And look, I was green, I was naive, I probably didn't know very much, but you know, sometimes knowing stuff can be a hindrance.
Absolutely.
And so we set out to do some things at the School of Business that were quite exciting. Ultimately did land the naming gift and the opportunity to honor Harry Brock and rename the school for Harry. But those 5 years of being dean of the business school at Samford were some of the best years of our lives. We brought 2 children with us. Zach and Lauren were in middle school at the time. We loved our experience in Birmingham so much that we had Chloe. Chloe made it official. And I should say, just in case we don't get to it, Chloe's now a freshman at Samford University.
That's the best.
So she's come full circle. But those 5 years at the Brock School of Business, the opportunity to learn leadership, to work with an incredible faculty and staff, to see that school grow in its footprint, its name recognition, its reputation, really was incredible foundation for me as I thought about a career in higher education leadership and administration. And man, we loved this place. Dr. Westmoreland took me under his wing and just taught me so much. Empowered me to lead, even if sometimes I made a few mistakes along the way. And it was just an incredible foundation for what the Lord had prepared for me.
How did you deal with leading at the age of 35? There's this term that's around where they talk about imposter syndrome. So you may, or probably 9 times out of 10, you're the youngest in the room when it pertains to leadership decisions. And you're navigating this role while maintaining but still building relationships with the team members that's a part of the solutions that you're establishing. How did you navigate that, knowing that there was a number tied to your age, but also at the same time, you still have that position.
Yeah, I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes. I know I did. But I also think that I had a great respect for people who had been around the track a few more times.
Right.
And really had a great respect for the people in the school, faculty in particular, who had more experience. So I tried to put a leadership team together that would amplify my own gifts, would equip and enable the vision that I had for the school, and fill some of those blind spots, right? Be able to speak wisdom.
Right.
And so we had a great team that we put together. And it was an exciting time at Samford too. We were under new leadership. Samford's impact was growing, beginning to grow even more. And so we kind of caught a tailwind, right? We kind of caught a tailwind. And I'm sure some of that tailwind made up for some of my naivete and lack of leadership experience. But I've always tried to have a great respect for the qualities and giftedness of team members.
Yeah.
And if I did anything well, it was I put a great team around me as a young dean that really equipped and enabled our success.
Right. What led to the strategy, but also the opportunity to think through, all right, we are looking to establish more dollars within the business school. We have incredible donors, incredible relationships. Let's talk about naming rights. Like, what led to that being a strategy and an opportunity that you sought out?
Well, we certainly had as our goal to increase the impact of the business school. And I don't think Samford had been creating and equipping graduates in business since 1965 and doing a good job of that. But I also think, if we're just being truthful, the business school at that time was probably not hitting on all cylinders. It was probably not living into its potential. And so, if anything, I think I brought both some energy and urgency around, trying to increase the profile of our business school. Not so that we could pat ourselves on the back, so that we could open up more doors of opportunity for our graduates. Right. And so it was in those conversations that I was introduced to Harry Brock. Harry Brock, as you know, founder of Compass Bank, legendary Birmingham businessman, was a longtime trustee at Samford. And so I already had an affinity toward and a love for this institution. And so it was through conversations with Harry about his dream for what Samford could be. His dream for the business school at Samford was that it would always be a place that would nurture young people who wanted to start their own businesses. Very entrepreneurial. Not to the exclusion of other disciplines and emphases, but he really wanted to create a place where young men and women who wanted to be risk takers and to start their own ventures could come and learn about doing that, whether that was taking over family businesses or starting out on their own. And so it was through some of those formative conversations with Harry that Harry began to catch a vision. And what Harry concluded was, but for his largesse, but for his generosity to the institution, Samford might not be able to pull that off in the business school. And so, working alongside Dr. Westmoreland, certainly, we began to kind of shape that opportunity. And so Harry decided that in addition to that generosity, adding his name to the school was going to really help us to capture the hearts and minds of people who could kind of catch the fever, who could kind of catch the inspiration, catch the vision. And boy, that created rocket fuel for the business school. And now I would say the Brock School of Business is one of the leading business schools in the country, certainly in the Southeast, and certainly among faithful Christian universities, one of the best business schools in the country.
Well, I did not know that about good old Harry. I'm very appreciative of that spirit because I am an entrepreneur, and there were definitely experiences and exposure within that. That business school that created some anxiety around accounting, around investments. Absolutely. And now that we are in this space, there are some best practices that we're able to glean from. How did your comfort around capital markets understanding the language of money while recognizing that, when gifts like this or commitments like this are made, it's personal, but it's also strategic. Yeah. And so being able to have that dialogue while being able to speak to we'll just say the money aspect of it as well, did that help kind of bridge the gap as you were having these conversations?
No question. I think Harry's comfort level in my leadership was largely due to not only our personal relationship and our shared vision for the school, but his understanding that I was a good financial leader, that I understood how to be a good steward of those financial resources. Right. Look, in an industry, in an endeavor as noble as education, as noble as higher education, sometimes we don't want to admit that it can often be about resources. It can often be about the fuel that empowers all of that. Right. And so, as you know, you're a leader of nonprofits as well. Where there's no margin, there's no mission.
That's right.
What I like to tell people is that a nonprofit organization, like a large university, like the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, like any other noble entity, that nonprofit is a tax status.
Yeah.
All the same laws of gravity apply.
That's right.
Revenues have to exceed expenses.
That's right.
Right? For these missions, these noble missions to persist.
That's right.
And so my comfort level with economics, with financial management, were certainly important and continue to be important.
Right. As
I now lead a very large economic organization, whose core mission is still education.
Right.
But that educational mission is fueled and empowered by a strong balance sheet and strong financial performance. Right. And you can't separate those two.
Right.
You cannot do that. And so that's what presidents get to do. That's what deans get to do. While faculty members are engaged in the classroom and teaching students and those kinds of things, administrators also have to be thinking about the ways in which organizations are run and resources are garnered and used to increase impact, right?
I just love how God is so intentional. So you have this oversight of the Broad School of Business to where you're auditing, but you're also a top talent where folks are like, hey, we want Beck over here. Yep. And so in 2010, Whitworth University, you get a phone call. What was your process to see if this was something you were going to entertain, considering what you know about the business structure of colleges and universities, also knowing that there are other folks that you have to communicate with, which is the Board of Trustees. So what was your process to see if that was an opportunity that you were going to pursue or receive the offer from?
I was 40 years old at the time, so still relatively young, especially as leadership is concerned. I had had the opportunity to be mentored by three incredible university presidents. Right. My president at Baylor, Robert Sloan, Tom Quartz, Andy Westmoreland. It was during that time where I really felt like the Lord was calling me to university leadership. Yeah. I would have loved to have been president of Samford University, but guess what? Dr. Westmoreland had a few more years in front of him. And so really the discernment was the Lord's calling me to this, right? And I need to be obedient. And so after a lot of prayerful discernment, Julie and I, once again, packed up the family. We talked about moving around a lot as a kid and how that created some learning and some expertise around moving. We packed up the family and we moved to Spokane, Washington. Now, Isaac, if you look at a map, Birmingham, Alabama, and Spokane, Washington, that's a long way away from one another, geographically and culturally. And so, not only was I moving into a new role, moving into now a presidency, but we were now moving out of the South. Learning a completely new culture, learning how to love a new place. Our 11 years at Whitworth were amazing. What the Lord taught us, what the Lord taught me about leadership, the opportunity, the privilege of serving another faith-based, smaller liberal arts college, if you will. It was just an amazing experience. Right. And Julie became a first lady, during that time, really began to serve professionally alongside me in those roles. And so our marriage changed, our family changed, the degree to which we were connected to our work changed. But those 11 years were incredible opportunities for me. And I look back at those and they were among the best years of our lives. So grateful for God, so grateful for that community at Whitworth to give me the opportunity and the blessing to lead.
Are there any memories that stick out that help refine your leadership style to what it is today?
Yeah, so many. So many. Everything from leading a college through some successful times where large gifts and donations propelled academic programs and new building and infrastructure. Opportunities also to live into austere environments where budgets needed to be trimmed and some reality needed to be faced.
Yes.
Facing campus tragedy. One of the things you know about a university community is we're a family.
Yes.
We're a family.
Right.
And so when students or employees face tragedies, we have to come around, those families in some unique and important ways. Learning how to be a leader of a faith-based organization, which pulled huge learning opportunities.
Right. We definitely tell businesses that we talk to, like, hey, go outsource your ignorance.
Yeah,
right. Anything that you may not know, hopefully you got some discretionary, some margins to pay for it.
Yeah.
But it's very important, even as our company grows. There's certain components that are tied to my responsibility that aren't the best use of my time. And so being at peace with we'll just say the delineation of that role or responsibility to someone else, and knowing that, okay, this is what I'm good at, let me stick to that, but also ensure that I am building a team that understands not only the culture, but also the environment that we're walking into to ensure it's consistent.
This is true of every leader at every level of the organization. So what I'm about to say is not meant to kind of prop up my own importance or the president's importance or the CEO's importance. But this institution will not achieve what it is being called to achieve. It will not have the impact that I firmly believe the Lord is calling us to at Samford University, unless I am able to appropriately position myself for success.
Yeah.
And success means that I'm attending to the issues that only the president can attend to, that I'm engaged in those things that truly move the ball forward institutionally, whether that's with the board or with benefactors or with the community or whatever. And then appropriately, as you've hinted, delegate things that need my supervision but not my active involvement.
Right.
If I'm not attending to those margins appropriately, I'm not going to equip Samford University for success. And so I have to be dogmatic.
Right.
I have to be stubborn about ensuring that I'm spending my time in the ways that bring the highest and best value to this role and to this institution. And Isaac, that is a constant calibration. That is a constant discernment. There are times when we're misaligned in those areas. There's times when I'm engaged in things that I shouldn't be engaged in. There are times when I'm more appropriately positioned to really help move the institution forward. But I've always got to be asking myself, am I spending my time in the highest and best ways to move the institution forward?
How did you establish quiet time? So much evolution around, if it's from Baylor, back to Samford, now we're at Whitworth. What were some of the best practices that you were able to maintain to ensure that, all right, I need to make sure that I'm centering myself, morning time, evening time, if I'm working out? What were some of the ways in which you were able to debrief with so much that you were carrying?
That's right. That's such a good question for any leader that is leading an organization, has a lot coming at him or her. How do you create white space? How do you create executive time? How do you create those opportunities? Because the tyranny of the urgent is real.
Yes.
And there are so many days we leaders walk into the office with an agenda that's quickly hijacked, by those other things. So that's what I mean when I say being dogmatic and stubborn. So I learned early on in my professional career that I'm a morning person. And this could be just as true for somebody who likes to work into the wee hours of the late hours of the night, wee hours of the morning. But I'm a morning person. So my discipline, my habit, my structure is that I wake up very early in the morning And I work for about 3 hours before I come into the office. Because once I come to the office, I like to say I'm dealing with other people's problems at that point.
Yeah.
But that 2 or 3 hours in the morning that allow me to wake up, have a devotional time, ground myself in my faith, but also have that strategic white space time where I'm clearly thinking, I'm most energetic, I've got my cup of coffee, right? I don't have the distractions around me. That has been a really important pattern and discipline in my life. And then ensuring that my days are full of things that really help move the needle for the organization. University presidents wear a lot of hats. Sometimes I need to be the chief mascot. Sometimes I need to be, the head of state. Sometimes the president's presence is important, for the community. But ensuring that my work time during the day is really centered on those things, again, that help empower my leadership team and move the needle forward are the disciplines that I've helped to kind of establish and build. But that early, you called it a quiet time, and it is that early time where I can really have a white sheet of paper in front of me and think about the aspirations of the institution and my own leadership aspirations. That's critical.
Yeah. So I believe it was the spring of 2021 in which I believe you get another phone call. So what's the process?
Well, this process was a little different. This process was a little different. Whitworth was an institution that I didn't know a lot about. I got a call kind of out of the blue. We love Samford University, and our time at Samford as Dean of the Brock School of Business, and my personal love for the people here, and particularly Dr. Westmoreland, just engendered an interest level. I was watching from afar. I was reading the press releases. And you should know that Andy Westmoreland and Gina Westmoreland, his wife, had in those intervening years when we were at Whitworth, become even better friends, even deeper friends, because now we were colleagues, right? And so things like, calling Dr. Westmoreland up and saying, hey, how are you handling this? Seeing he and Gina at a conference and spending some personal time with them, helping each other walk through the pandemic, right? We were both leading institutions and figuring out on a daily basis what it meant to keep a place open during a global pandemic. These connections were sustained. And so Julie and I had in the back of our minds that maybe the Lord had us at Whitworth for 20 more years, but maybe, just maybe, when Dr. Westmoreland decided to retire, the Lord would, in His goodness, bring us back. And that was our heart's desire. That was our heart's desire. So when Dr. Westmoreland retired, we decided to be a part of the process. That would select Samford's next president, and really just gave that to the Lord. Let the Lord know what our desires were, but also we wanted the best for Samford, and so and we wanted the best for Whitworth. And but I would be lying to you if I said that if we had not been selected, had I not been selected, I would have been crushed. It would have been devastating. So it was the thrill of a lifetime in March of 2021 to be named by the Board of Trustees here at Samford as Samford's next president. And I could not have scripted it in any other way. I could not have dreamed it in any other way. We were so full of joy, so full of gladness and gratitude to move back to Homewood and to Birmingham and to be a part of this community again.
How much of the business model of this university was challenged through the pandemic? So inheriting this role, still working through what a transition is like, especially just any type of succession planning requires work and time. While dealing with the reality of a day-to-day uncertainty, but still cultivating a learning experience for the students, right? And so what were some of the challenges that you worked through, but also what are some best practices that still live today that the challenge ultimately created?
Whether it was at Whitworth or at Samford, we leaders of public-facing institutions needed to balance the public health needs, right? We were facing some real public health challenges and the desire to maintain continuity, conformity, health among the constituents we were serving.
Right.
We knew that the best education didn't happen in people's bedrooms. We just knew that.
Right.
We knew that the relational, incarnational, residential experience that Samford students came to Samford to experience was not being well served through online education or distance education. So Dr. Westmoreland and I, we had to balance those things.
Right.
And I think Samford did it really well. The first thing I want to say is that when I arrived in 2021, I inherited a healthy organization.
That's great.
Dr. Westmoreland left the cupboards full.
Yeah.
And, we often talk about Samford's growth today. We often talk about the expansion that we're experiencing. This all started during Dr. Westmoreland's tenure. I just picked up the ball and kept running with it. So I give so much credit to him. But I inherited a healthy organization and an organization that was emerging from the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So at Samford, Dr. Westmoreland had to carry the burden of, what that meant to kind of walk daily through a public health crisis. Right. I had the privilege of kind of opening the university back up. And while we still, at the very beginning, still had to attend to some issues, we were still, attending to some kind of the after effects of the pandemic. And for the most part, I was granted the great privilege of kind of bringing things back to normalcy at Samford. And so what a great privilege that was as a new president, as somebody who was a fresh voice in the community and really set me up for success, I think, in my early days of leadership. But boy, we learned a lot through those challenging days. I don't pray. I hope that we never have to walk through something like that again. But Samford navigated that very well. And because it was a healthy institution going into the pandemic, and because we navigated it well, we were a healthy organization coming and really poised for success. And here's where I would really point to that opportunity for success. Coming out of the pandemic, we learned that distance education might have its role in certain areas and certain, sectors, but we learned, didn't we, that children were not well served.
That's right.
And so there was a surge in demand for, in our case, residential undergraduate education. And while the pandemic was awful, and there was incredible human and economic tragedy that came from it, there perhaps wasn't anything more important to reassert the value of face-to-face. Reassert the incredible value of community. And that's what Samford does well, as you know. And so the current surge of demand that we've experienced post-pandemic, I think is in large part due to the lessons we learned during the pandemic. And so I think Samford is as strong as it's ever been, and ironically, some of that strength stems from how we navigated the pandemic.
Can you speak to the business model, especially of a private university, and you could probably contrast in between the public and private just in regards of funding sources. I know folks at Samford may think it's just tuition and parking tickets, but it's a little bit more.
I needed to talk to you about some of those, by the way.
I had to get a copy of my transcript, so I was like, I'm good. I paid all my fees. Okay.
No, you're right. The economic model of higher education is challenging. Just to differentiate between public institutions and private ones, the main difference is that public institutions can depend more directly on taxpayer funding, right? So in Alabama, for example, the state legislature, as they should, appropriate tax dollars to the support of our public institutions. And so when public institutions have to build a new science building, or they need to build another parking lot, or they need to do, not all, but a good degree of that is covered through public finance and public investment. A private institution does not have those sources. We have to, when we want to build a science building or we want to build a new parking lot, we have to turn to other sources. Those are most likely philanthropic sources, or debt,
Yep.
or other financial partners, and more sophisticated, structured partnerships. We can talk more about that. But I would say this too: in every way, Samford is a public institution. We are public-facing. We serve the public interest. We do take enormous amounts of public subsidy through either federal student support, through Pell Grants, subsidized student loans, other things, state appropriated funds to some of our needier students. And we have a public charge, right? We live in a community. We are a public institution in every way.
Yeah.
And I emphasize that point because that's important to state, that we are not an institution that exists solely behind the gates on Lakeshore Drive to accrue and to attend to the private good that higher education can be for our students.
Right.
We have a much more expansive mission than that,
Right.
that bleeds into our communities, that bleeds into the public at large, and that contributes to the common good. That's important to say. That's important to say. But we talked about this earlier. If revenues don't exceed expenses, places like Samford aren't going to be around.
Right.
And we've witnessed this, sadly, in Birmingham with the closure of Birmingham Southern College.
That's right.
And we have seen closures of other well-regarded colleges and universities across the country. And it's because the economics caught up with them.
Right.
Institutions of higher learning are either growing and thriving or they're shrinking and dying. And there's no in between, Isaac. I wish there was.
Right.
And I'm fortunate, we're fortunate at Samford to be growing and thriving right now.
Right.
But we've got to attend to the economics of higher ed. We have to make smart decisions. We have to manage our investments very, very carefully. And at the end of the day, if our revenues, whatever their source, whether they come through tuition and fees, parking tickets, or they come through the benefaction of others, whether they come from the private investment or through debt markets and other investors, those revenues have to be well managed. And then we also have to create a world-class learning environment here, but also do so in a way that's affordable and sustainable and provides the greatest opportunity to the broadest swath of students, regardless of economic status, as we possibly can.
Yeah. Speaking of some of the financial instruments that you mentioned, and looking at 2021, and we could probably stay macro on what those KPIs have been. You mentioned that sports is the front door to the university. Have you seen a correlation in we'll just say some of those economic numbers, student enrollments, asset size in regards to the endowment, in correlation to the growth and the exposure that sports has been able to provide? The athletics have done an incredible job. But I remember you mentioning that the athletics is the front door to the university. Is that correlating to the economics of the university as well?
Yeah. I would say athletics is a front door to the university. We have other front doors.
That's right.
But it's an important one, in as much as it gets as much public attention as anything. We have incredible academic success on this campus.
Absolutely.
We have academic teams that win national championships here. I wish the newspaper would cover our debate team as much as they do our men's basketball team.
Right.
The reality in the society we live in is we know sports is going to have an outsized influence on people's perceptions of an institution. Right. And so we have to acknowledge that, and we have to take advantage of that. Right. And so because of my love for athletics, because I see athletics as being a critical element of a collegiate experience for our students, and because, as you've mentioned or hinted at, it brings broader exposure to the institution, which can increase demand for education, maybe increase philanthropy, public investment and involvement. It's an important strategy for us. I'm grateful to say that in our current strategic plan at Samford, athletic success is a pillar. It's one of the highest priorities that we've named, among other priorities, but one of the highest priorities that we've named. And yes, we have seen a correlation between our athletic prominence and success in an FCS mid-major environment and our applications, our mail applications, and the winning of hearts and minds around Birmingham and around the region. We've seen a great correlation of those things.
Right. Yeah. I know for a fact during the tournament, I got a lot of text messages from folks that I never even heard from.
Gotcha.
I was like, man, y'all got robbed, right? And so
all ball.
All ball. And so that was an incredible way to really show off the university as an alum, right? And just to be able to see so much success. And just as you mentioned, there's multiple ways to be able to get into the university, but typically sports is that common denominator to where they may not know much about the university, but they know about that particular sport.
That's exactly right.
And so it's really been a melting pot, that it's been able to
It's a common denominator that so many people share. And look, if somebody gets engaged with Samford because they watch a competitive game out in Salt Lake City against Kansas, they go to our website and they realize that, oh, wow, Samford not only has a good basketball program, but they're a strong academic institution.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, their student athletes don't just win on the court, they win in the classroom as well. Samford has the third highest graduation success rate in the country among all NCAA Division I schools. Oh, and you know what? They're a Christian university.
Right.
And they really place a premium on growing students' faith as they prepare students for life after graduation. The world of Samford begins to open up for people who might have come to find out who we were playing next in football.
That's right.
So that's what we have to embrace.
Right.
And we don't need to be embarrassed about it. We don't need to be shy about it.
Right.
We are an FCS mid-major program. We're not a University of Alabama. We're not an Auburn University. We're not gonna command the kinds of attention and resources that those programs do. And at our level, we can be a real place of excellence.
Yeah.
We can really shine a light on what I might call a pure form of student athlete, a pure form of college athletics. NIL and transfer portals and those things have certainly trickled down to our level. But Isaac, our student athletes are taking classes. They're here for the long haul.
Right.
They're members of our community. They're not journeymen. It's a very different experience here. And one might say, in fact, John Gross, our new head football coach, said this is a pure form of student athlete than you might see. And so in all things, we want our athletics program to embody and reflect the values of our institution because it is that front door that you called it. Yeah.
Speaking of athletics, and you mentioned another we'll just say an intervention that you are navigating through, which is through this whole name, image, and likeness era. Probably more uncertainty than there is certainty on what the future is going to look like. Recruiting and retaining athletes is definitely a challenge, but also having the coach that can understand that dynamic is extremely important as well. What was some of the processes that you went through, knowing that we have a basketball role that we're about to fill, and we just fulfilled the head football coaching role as well, knowing that NIL is playing a pretty dominant role on how student athletes are making decisions?
Yeah. Because athletics is such a strategic priority, leadership in those areas is, and I think we've got the best athletic director at our level in the country, Martin Newton.
Yep.
But filling those coaching roles is so critically important. The number one attribute is mission fit.
Yeah.
These coaches need to understand who Samford is.
Yeah.
And to be very candid with you, they need to embody a Christian worldview and ethic and have an active faith, so that they can embody the mission and values of the institution. That's first and foremost.
Right.
You don't pass that test, you don't get any farther.
That's right.
But we are going to hire coaches at Samford who are serious about success and who have demonstrated success at all levels.
Right.
And so as you think about replacing a Bucky McMillan, as you think about replacing a Chris Hatcher, look, Chris Hatcher, by the way, winningest coach in Samford football history.
Yep.
We love Chris, but when you think about replacing two people like that, you've got to dig deep.
Yeah.
And you've got to aim high. And so in both of those searches, we were looking for people who not only embodied our mission, but who had experienced success at the highest levels, knew what winning looked like. At Samford, we're not afraid to say, we're going to win. We want to win here. But also who knew how to build a program. This is what you're getting at. At a Samford University, sure, we're going to tap into NIL. We're going to use the resources we can garner to put ourselves in a position of success. But when those coaches are sitting in the living rooms of those players recruiting them, they're recruiting them to Samford University.
Right.
They're recruiting them to a high quality academic experience, a Christian community, a place that's going to embrace them, encourage them to grow in their whole selves.
Right.
They're inviting them to much, much more than simply an athletic experience.
Right.
And so we had to find coaches that were not only well equipped to win, but also well equipped to steward that student athlete experience at Samford, and then represent Samford out into the community. And in Lenny Acuff and in John Gross, we hit grand slams.
Yeah.
These are two men who have demonstrated success, embody the Christian mission of the university, know what Samford's all about, and will recruit young men in those cases. All of our coaches do this as well, but in those two cases, recruit young men to the university who want a bigger experience than just success on the playing field.
Excellent. And a few more questions before we finish up. I am curious about, just from an operational perspective, artificial intelligence is playing a more significant role in what learning is like, and having exposure to information, right or wrong. But it's also allowing companies, organizations, entities to operate more efficiently.
Yes.
How are you implementing AI within your world of leadership, and how's the university preparing our future leaders to make sure they could use that as a tool?
Yeah, let me start with the classroom. Our faculty members made a decision early on to embrace artificial intelligence. It would be understandable to attend to instincts that would cause us to back away from,
Right.
be skeptical of. But our faculty were prescient and wise when they said, look, this is the future. And so we're not running from this, we're running toward this. But we need to be careful. We need to bring a responsible, ethical, and I would argue faith-based perspective
Right.
to how AI can accentuate and be a complement to the educational experiences that our students have. So across disciplines, our faculty members are learning with our students how to engage responsibly with AI and how AI will shape the careers and the futures that these students are going to be going into. So I could not applaud more the perspective and the posture of our faculty toward AI. Similarly, at the university, we are a large, complex organization, and so we are also looking at how do we use AI to better equip us for success in the future. Let me mention just a couple of ways. We've engaged artificial intelligence to, for example, help us with predictive deferred maintenance. We have 3.5 million square feet of climate-controlled space on this campus. And as you can imagine, in any given facility, we have a number of systems
That is
that are either brand new or close to failure. And using artificial intelligence to help inform how we use limited resources to attack those issues in a way that allows us to cover as many of the critical issues and systems as we can while retaining dollars for the future is one example.
Yeah.
Another example is the allocation of that space. We have any number of demands on the space, and how we put classes together, how we utilize spaces for events and other things is it's a Rubik's Cube, right? It's a big linear programming problem.
Right.
And so we've engaged with artificial intelligence to help us, think about space allocation.
Right.
We've used artificial intelligence to help streamline transcript review. When a transfer student comes in with a certain amount of credits and classes to their credit, how do they map into the Samford curriculum? That was all done by hand, and now can be done using artificial intelligence. So we are trying to be responsibly on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, as you alluded to, as it helps us become a more economically viable, sustainable, and efficient organization.
Right. So knowing what you know now, let's say in 2026, you are an 18-year-old and you are attending Samford University. What would you study?
That's a great question. By the way, I have a Samford freshman. Chloe, who was born here. I mentioned Chloe earlier, is a freshman this year. Here's what I love about Samford. Samford creates and offers an array of programs to students to fit and to fill almost any calling.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that the Lord equips and calls us. I firmly believe that. I tell students all the time, if God has called you here, he will meet you here. And so our responsibility as a learning community is to create an array of programs that can attend to almost any calling that the Lord may be placing on a student's heart. American philosopher and theologian Frederick Buechner said that our callings, our vocations, are at the intersection of our heart's greatest yearnings and the world's greatest needs. And we know that those intersections are abundant and can look very different depending on the student. So whether a student is interested in going into the health sciences, becoming a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist or a physical therapist, whether they're interested in going into a classroom, right, and studying in our school of education, they're being called to be a financial advisor, they're being called to the ministry, they're being called to any number of opportunities. We want to meet that student with a 21st century curriculum, with a caring community and a faithful community that mentors and prepares them for success going forward. So I would not be prescriptive for a student coming into Samford. I would say, what is God calling you to be? How has God shaped your life? Listen to the story of your life. How has God shaped your experiences, your passions, and your aptitudes in ways that call you to something? We're walking through this journey with our daughter right now. Our daughter, like so many Samford students, is bright and capable and passionate, and she is listening well to the story of her life and her heart to see what God has planned for her. And I'm proud of Samford because whatever she chooses, we're going to meet her right there, and we're going to help her accomplish her goals and dreams.
Love that. When you think about dreams, one of the questions, as you know, we have a financial literacy program inside K through 12, pretty much K through 16 with all the NIL assets
So
and
important.
athletes. It's been a, it's been work for sure, knowing what is required, but also knowing what it will, we'll just say, have an impression on when it pertains to one's life. And as we engage with these students, we like to share with them that, hey, dreams are free, so don't dream cheap. If you had an unlimited amount of money and an unlimited amount of time, what problem would you solve?
Poverty. Jesus said the poor will always be among you, and I think what Christ was saying is don't ever forget that there are people around you who are less fortunate. But we live in the wealthiest country in the world. And we have surpluses beyond imagination. And together we can tackle and we can solve issues that are pesky and prevalent and pervasive. We have far too many children and families living in poverty in this country. And I've spent part of my academic career looking at this. I've lived some of this story personally. I've seen how certain interventions can make a world of difference in a child's life. And so if I could solve that problem, if I could spend the rest of my life thinking about that problem, I would feel fulfilled.
Yeah. How would you approach it?
Systemically. As we know, poverty is a condition that has embedded within it multiple causes, systemic and pesky issues. And you have to come at it from a lot of different areas. If it was as easy as putting money in people's pockets, then perhaps we would have solved it by now. But we know it's not. It goes all the way to the ways in which we love and care for our young people. Starts right there. How we surround them with stable and healthy supports. how we equip and enable families for success, how we attend to those who have capacity and talent who haven't been given opportunity, and also then how we meet the people where they are and help them to elevate and achieve their own dreams and success. Obviously, education plays a big role in that, but it's not just education. It's healthcare, it's social supports, it's faith and faithful communities. It's thinking about how to allocate tax resources and other resources toward their highest and best uses. It's healthcare. It's it's just so. It's mental health. It's so many things at once. It's a complex issue, but so it's going to require some complex thinking. But as I said, we live in the wealthiest country in the world, and I think Americans can. I think we're equipped and we're talented and we're smart enough to try to solve these issues.
Well, last two things I would say is 11 a.m. tomorrow, we are confirmed.
Good. Awesome.
And
you're talking about the golf course.
Absolutely.
Let's go. All right, let's go.
And alongside that, I wanted to say thank you. It's rare that someone that is very proximate to the economy and would consider themselves an economist operates with so much empathy. And very thankful that you are the president, the 19th president of Samford University. Grateful for the man that you are and who you've continued to become, the husband, the father. It's an incredible example for me to be able to witness and glean upon. I watch more interviews than I email you, and so there's been so many different, I won't say tensions, but there has been moments of tension that you've had to speak truth, and you stood on truth, and I really appreciate that. So being able to have this time with you today has been an honor, especially to be amongst such a prolific leader. So thank you for your time.
Isaac
today,
Cooper, let me just say real quickly, we're proud of you at Samford University. You are doing and have done so many important things in our community, and I'm just blessed to know you as a friend. I'm blessed to partner with you on things that are of mutual interest, and I can't wait to see what God's going to continue to do in your life as well.
I received that. Thank you, sir. All right, good people, we are finished with this great episode of the Planning Podcast. Make sure you stay tuned, you subscribe, and of course, stay planning.
And go Bulldogs.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
That was delightful.
All right.
Yeah.